Have a work version of yourself, a family version, a version that only exists around that one friend where you become inexplicably 40% funnier, and a version that appears around your ex that you genuinely cannot explain and would prefer not to. If you've ever hung up the phone and thought, who was that? This video is about that. This is not a personality disorder. This is one of the most well-documented phenomena in social psychology, and it has a name. Psychologists call it self-monitoring, and it was first formally studied by Mark Snyder at the University of Minnesota in 1974. High self-monitors adapt their behavior, presentation, and personality to match the social context they're in. Low self-monitors behave roughly the same, regardless of who's watching. Neither is better. They just produce very different social experiences and very different problems. High self-monitors are described as chameleons. Low self-monitors are described as a lot to be around at work events. Here's what's happening in your brain when you walk into a new social context. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for social cognition, activates a rapid scan. Who's here? What are the rules? What version of me works best in this room? This happens in milliseconds, mostly unconsciously. In high self-monitors, this social scanning system is faster, more sensitive, and more responsive. Research using fMRI shows that high self-monitors show greater activation in the medial prefrontal cortex, the region associated with thinking about how others perceive you during social tasks. Their brain is essentially running a continuous social simulation, calculating, adjusting, updating. Every room is a new calculation. There's a framework in psychology called situated identity theory. The idea is that your identity is not a fixed object, it's a set of selves, plural, each activated by context. The you at a job interview is not performing. It is you, just a specific version of you, called forward by that situation. William James, the father of American psychology, wrote in 1890 that a person has as many social selves as there are individuals who recognize him. He wrote this in 1890, before social media, which presumably would have ended him. Here's the part people actually lose sleep over. If I act differently around different people, which version is the real me? This is the wrong question. Research in identity psychology suggests the answer is all of them. Your real self is not a single version hiding behind the others. It's the full range, the pattern across all the versions. The real you is not the work version or the family version. The real you is the fact that specific contexts reliably produce specific versions. That pattern is yours. No one else's contexts produce exactly those versions in exactly that order. That said, there's a version of this that isn't healthy, when the adaptation isn't context-appropriate behavior, but erasure. When you shrink in certain rooms, not because it's appropriate, but because someone made you feel like the full version wasn't welcome. When you have a version for a specific person that you don't like, smaller, quieter, more apologetic than you actually are, and you revert to it automatically, even when you're trying not to. That's not self-monitoring. That's a learned response to an unsafe dynamic. The distinction matters. Are you adapting up, bringing more of yourself forward, or adapting down, hiding parts to avoid consequence? One is social intelligence. The other is worth paying attention to. There's a specific relationship cost to very high self-monitoring that doesn't get talked about enough. If you're always reading the room and adjusting, it becomes genuinely difficult to know what you actually want, because you've spent so long optimizing for what the room wants from you. Studies on high self-monitors show they report lower certainty about their own preferences, values, and feelings, not because they don't have them, but because the signal, their own internal state, gets drowned out by the noise of constant social processing. There's also a loneliness cost. If no one ever sees the same version of you, no one ever really knows you. They know a version, which is warm, but it's not the same as being known. The upside, and there is one, is substantial. High self-monitors are better at navigating complex social environments. They get promoted more often in contexts that require coalition building and influence. They're better at de-escalating conflict. They can read the room fast enough to shift tone before things deteriorate. A 2001 study found that high self-monitors performed significantly better in managerial roles requiring cross-functional collaboration. They're also, on average, more empathetic, because the same social scanning system that helps them adapt also helps them notice what other people are feeling. The skill that makes it harder to know yourself makes it easier to understand everyone else. This is not a fair trade, but it is the trade. You are not inconsistent. You are not fake. You are a social animal operating in multiple environments, activating different capacities as each context calls for them. The version of you that goes quiet at family dinners. The version that becomes a completely different person the moment your best friend walks in. The version you don't fully recognize in old messages from that relationship. All of them are you. The goal isn't to collapse them into one consistent version. The goal is to make sure none of them are ashamed of the other.